sometimes like I feel like the Chargers are just a little bit just kind of there playing football, not trying to be mean, kind of thing.
Sure.
I want to see a dude like want to just beat somebody up, kind of thing. Like
send a message. Send
a message. Like, I mean, what's not to say for him to just chuck some DN and just throw him off the field, basically, and how wild that would be, like, to see something like that. I think it just really sets a tone, sets a message to our offensive line that you can't get to our quarterback, and we're going to destroy you, kind of thing. Another episode of Bolt Bros is coming at you.
Bolt Bros! Here we go!
Let's chat about the Combine. Shout out to the Chargers chat, and they always called it the Underwear Bowl, I believe is what they like to call it. Because, and the thing is, though, I have a hard time with the Combine. Because, like, you could take some of the stats and little dimensions and the cattle prodding they like to do these players and try to figure out where their flaws are at. Maybe they got skinny ankles or something, and a thin neck or something. I don't know. Weird things like that. Yeah. But it's just little things that you could take from it that I don't really try to look too heavily into it, because I feel there's a difference between game speed and being in your underwear running around. And so I don't know what your guys' thoughts are on the Combine if you look at it that way, because I look at it very much like take it as a grain of salt. There could be a little bit of equation for what they do on field, but what's your guys' thoughts of the Combine?
Go ahead, Andy. Start off.
Yeah, no, I think bottom line, you're right? Like, I mean, there's a real difference between jumping up and hitting some, the height thing and long jump and speed and whatever. And like what do you really gain from that? I understand. Yes, it's a metric. Yes, it's something that you can look at. But again, kind of goes back to my little vignette that I talked about a little while ago about Justin Palmer, right? When he got drafted, he was drafted in the 3rd round, way above what anyone ever thought he would be drafted in the NFL, right? I think people thought 4th, maybe 5th. In fact, I remember specifically watching the draft last year and was like, why the hell did the Chargers draft him at that spot? But Telesco is very good at understanding the draft and understanding personnel that fits well.
Yep.
And the reality is this: like he was on a bad team, a bad quarterback, and he couldn't show off his talents, right?
Yep.
So he's on a good team with an excellent quarterback, and he looks like a stud. So I think there's intangibles, right? And people have to eventually look through that.
True.
And decide, hey, is this guy really ready for prime time or not? That's a huge part of it.
Yep, absolutely. Any thoughts at all, Kyle?
Yeah, I got thoughts. Yeah, of course I got thoughts. Well, honestly, like I feel like if it didn't matter, then they wouldn't do it. And so obviously they do it, and so it definitely matters. And the truth is, yeah, you're right though. They are cattle prodding, and they're like poking people, and they're just kind of like dissecting every little piece of what they do, and saying, oh, well, he's not good at this, and blah blah blah. Like that's just all hearsay and stuff like that. But the truth is too is like these. I think a lot of these tests do kind of show people's overall athleticism.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I mean, yeah, because like if you can see like Jordan Davis, like and all these other people, whatever, like running a 40 meters or a 40 yard in less than 5 seconds, that's impressive. These are some big boys. I would not want to see a guy like that running at me at full speed. No, thank you. I'm folding. I'm all out.
You had to be mauled by a bear at that point, boy. Right?
Yeah,
you just
no.
Ball.
Yep.
Hey, I'm good. I'm good.
Just toss me around. I'm just fetal position there.
That's what half the quarterbacks do anyway. They just fall over. I'm on the ground. Bye.
See ya. Yep, not taking a hit from that guy.
I think the biggest thing though for me though, like I mean, all that stuff aside, like what's more important is the fact that this is like kind of a last chance for a lot of these other players to be like, hey, I can prove my talents here another time when and also when all these other managers and coaches and stuff like that are here as well, and you can meet with them and talk with them. Like it's not, it's just they're all there, so it makes things easier. However, I think that point is actually getting less and less now, though, because obviously the world is even smaller with like Zoom meetings. You can actually like have face-to-face conversations with people. I suppose like eventually that's how they're gonna get things done a lot more. Like they can just do a Zoom call or something like that, and just FaceTime even, and just get to know them personality and stuff like that. But yeah, it might still take away a little bit, because there's always a lot more to having meeting person to person than online and stuff like that. So that's just kind of my initial thoughts. And
sure,
yeah, and I mean the one thing too with the combine, and we're going to talk about specifically offensive players too on this video. And the one thing too, it is kind of a little bit of a meeting of obviously GMs and head coaches.
Yeah.
And you could probably talk a little bit. Once again, you don't want to dabble too much about saying, "Hey, team, what are you doing with this player?" And they might even drop a dime, being like, "Yeah, we might not drop, or might not sign that guy, or this guy." So it's almost like there's a little bit of strategy to having those conversations, which they don't want to say. They're dabbling into understanding who's going to be a free agent and not.
Yeah.
But it almost seems like it's one big meeting for the NFL to be able to like strategize for free agency, which is happening in a week or give or take the amount of time, to the draft. So now they could kind of go into the draft saying, "Hey, we want to go after this guy instead. So let's not pay attention as much on this type of position. Let's think that for that guy in free agency." So there's a little strategy to it and thought.
Yeah, and I think well said, right? I think at the end of the day too, like, and we've talked about this quite a bit. Like the Chargers are going to go defensive heavy in the draft, in my opinion, right? I think they will. I think they're going to go defensive heavy also in free agency. I mean, fifth ranked offense in the league, almost dead last worst in the league in defense, right? We couldn't stop anybody. Everyone knew they could just run the ball over us. So again, but I think it's good to highlight what we might do, right? I've seen a lot of drafts, boards say Chargers going to go for Olave, all these other guys.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be plenty of good people they can go after for depth. The Chargers have great people, but they could use this feature, right? Is Guyton the right guy? Is he really the right guy?
Yep.
He's done well.
Yeah.
But you got to know. I mean, you probably want another guy that could just be fast as hell and run and stretch the field. Even as another person, and let Guyton take a rest. This other guy just goes and just stretches the field and blows the top off the defense. The defense on the other team, right? So I think there's a lot of things you should look at on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting because in jumping into one of the positions here, and it could be a position of need for the Chargers depending on what happens with Mike Williams. I mean, even to say Guyton, is he that guy? I mean, Guyton has made some clutch catches at the right time, and he has found ways to make plays after the catch too.
For sure.
But one guy that was really interesting, and they kind of talked a little bit about this guy, and he came out of nowhere, in my opinion. Alex Pierce. I think he's from Cincinnati. He's a wide receiver from Cincinnati.
Yeah.
He was a 4.33 speed, 6'3", 211.
That's crazy.
That's kind of a big dude. Like, I mean, he's kind of a bigger guy, and I keep thinking in my head, I'm like, could this guy be like a Cooper Kupp kind of guy that comes out of nowhere? I mean, Cincinnati they had a pretty good season last year. I mean, what did they get into the playoffs, I believe, last year? He could be one of those guys that might fit that same mold. I mean, he's kind of a physical style of football, good for some contested catches, little slow off the line, but seems to have the right tools to be able to get in the right system. So, I mean, the thing about him, he was kind of teetering on a day 3 pick, but it sounds like this guy made some money and got into a day 2 pick. And so if you think about what the Chargers, if they want to go for a wide receiver, and once again, I don't imagine they're going to go with a wide receiver in the first 3 rounds because I think there's way bigger needs for us, especially if we sign, Mike Williams, which we might know here very shortly anyways. And it sounds like that's all the rumors that's going to happen. But I do look at a guy like that thinking, could he be a kick returner for us? Could he be another special teams guy for us? Could he, if we end up having Mike Williams, hey, it's not a bad thing to have more depth. Like 4th round guy, if you get him in 4th round, awesome. Like that might not be bad. We get him in the late third, great. I mean, but I still do think that the first 3 rounds we got bigger needs to work with. But
Yeah, big time.
Yeah,
that guy's crazy fast and a big dude. So I mean, if he got 52 catches, 884 yards last year, 8 touchdowns in Cincinnati. I mean, not bad. Not a bad thought to think about. And
Yeah,
there was a lot of speed on the wideouts too, and
Yeah.
we need speed.
holy moly.
you know, we talked about Palmer, right? But Palmer had a bad quarterback.
Yep.
But our Cincinnati quarterback was amazing, right? He did a great job, right? And so sometimes it's the element of your surroundings that
Yep.
improves who you are and how you can perform.
Yeah.
Sometimes I ask myself that question all the time. And again, going back to Tom Telesco, again, my overall thought about what he always does, he always picks the best available player on the board. Whoever the Chargers think is the best available player, they're going to go with. And they're going to make Brandon Staley put him in the system.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what I think is going to happen no matter what. Wide receiver, offensive lineman, or whoever. Because it's different when you start drafting for like, oh, we need a offensive right tackle. That's a very specific thing. And you might get the wrong guy for your system, but if you know, hey, I think this person, no matter what, will fit in our system, you can make adjustments as you go.
Yeah.
That's kind of my thought on it as well too.
Yep.
Well, I mean, I'll kind of springboard off something you said there. Is that like sometimes a player will be in a system that just doesn't work for them, and that's what actually makes it hard for them to actually
100%.
get their perspectives out there, and that's why they show up on the combine itself. Because let's go back to Justin Herbert. I mean, the biggest thing is like when he was playing for Oregon. I mean, he did amazing. Don't get me wrong, whatever. But he was playing in a more run happy kind of quarterback scheme, so he ran a lot of touchdowns as opposed to throwing, and that was a big part of why like a lot of people didn't think that he had it for the big leagues and stuff.
Yep. I remember they kept talking about him being he was never under center. He was always in shotgun.
Yeah, always in shotgun. I remember that. Yeah, like.
And that's a big conversation with a lot of these quarterbacks coming out of college because they're out of shotgun all the time.
Yeah.
And it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
So yeah, for sure.
It does make a huge difference. So, and then once he started throwing those 60-yard bombs or whatever, like they were like, whoa, hang on a sec here. This guy actually's got an arm, like he's got a little catapult there, like freaking,
right.
Yeah. So
he's got a quiet confidence about him. That's what I like about him. And you even look back at what he did in the combine, a few years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
He was an absolute stud. He did a great job. The Chargers released a video of his combine and what he did.
Right.
And it's interesting looking back at that and going, wow, this guy is an absolute stud. And and we see it now. But you always ask the question, right? Are you seeing what's right for each one of these guys individually, right?
Right.
One guy I think about too is also talking about like really protecting your quarterback is Trevor Penning.
Yep.
It's funny because those are the two names that the Chargers keep talking about potentially being their first round pick. Man, I don't know if Trevor Penning's going to be on the board, man. That guy is just nasty. And hey, another shout out to Chargers chat, right? And when I was talking to Kevin, right? Kevin and I were chatting. He was talking about how Trevor Penning watches horror movies before he goes out and plays to scare himself.
Yeah.
And get his mind right to, I don't know, beat up Mike Myers on the other side of the line.
Yeah. Man.
Freddy Krueger, hey, you gotta get elbowed.
Yeah.
I mean, he's gnarly, right? And I mean, I watch a lot of his videos, and I'm like, yo, this guy is nasty.
Yeah.
On the right side of the line, he was short up with Odell Bushi, right?
Yeah.
Amazing shape on the right side,
Right.
and we would have one of the best offensive lines in the league. But hey, look, is he even going to be there on 17th? Are they going to move up the draft? I mean, who knows, right? I mean, what you guys' thoughts on that?
I was actually playing around with a bunch of mock drafts a lot
Yeah.
today, and a lot of them actually said that there's probably a good chance that he might be available. So
really, you think so?
Yeah,
Huh.
it's very possible, but then it's just a mock draft, of course. I mean, anything goes, and actually, when the real thing happens, and yeah, so like it's very possible that he could be available for us, and I don't know if they would want to go with that. I mean, and I don't know exactly what position he played in college, but it was offensive lineman. And going on your point, another one of your points is that they can train him to be right tackle easily. Be like, okay, we want you for right tackle, so that's what you're gonna do now. Like, this is what we're gonna pay you to do. So let's do this, man.
Yeah, he played tackle for them, and he did a fantastic job. I mean, the thing is, though, even at the Senior Bowl, he was just chucking dudes around, and
he was gnarly.
And he's a very aggressive guy. And I mean, if he goes and watches horror movies and such, and Jason or I don't know, Hellraiser or whatever he's watching.
Hellraiser.
Yeah, I don't know. He's raising hell on the offensive line.
Yeah, comes out of the screen. The little girl comes out of the screen.
Yeah.
Drag me to hell. I don't know. Whatever movie. But I mean, that dude's got a high level of aggression, and it kind of just reminds me of some of those offensive tackles or guards that just have just a really big mean streak to them. And I don't mind that. I'd like to be able to show that there's some nastiness to the line.
Yeah.
Like sometimes, like I feel like the Chargers are just a little bit like just kind of there playing football, not trying to be mean, kind of thing.
Sure.
I want to see a dude like want to just beat somebody up, kind of thing. Like
send a message. Send
a message. Like, I mean, what's not to say for him to just chuck some DN and just throw him off the field, basically, and how wild that would be, like, to see something like that. I think it just really sets a tone, sets a message to our offensive line that you can't get to our quarterback, and we're going to destroy you, kind of thing. And so
I really like that idea because like the defense, like, he tends to be that kind of aggressiveness. I don't really feel like that from the offensive line to have that kind of aggressiveness, But so if we have that from the offensive side, like, then it will make them think twice about, I'm going against that. And obviously, like, like I said in one of the other videos too, is that, like, the right tackle is kind of like the weaker side usually, but it's also because that's not the blind side. You got to make sure that the left is completely protected.
Sure.
And because if the quarterback gets hit on that side, it's really bad news, So,
agreed.
But if we have that protection on the right and the left, I mean, that's going to help obviously our running back situation so much better too.
Yep.
And that's 100%. I would love that, man.
Well, even to say that too, we don't have to put a tight end on that side to be able to give them extra protection too. So if we have a lockdown line both ends, and then the middle is solid too.
Right.
I mean, it just opens up the whole game.
Yep.
I mean, the one thing too, and there's that other guy that keeps going out there, Daniel Falili, I think is how he pronounces his last name.
Yeah, Falili, yep.
I mean, that dude is 384 pounds, 6'8".
I think
that guy is massive.
He's like the biggest football player to ever play the game, potentially.
Yep.
I mean, dude, it's insane.
And you could get him deep in the draft. A lot of people are not thinking that he's going to go too high, right?
Right.
And I think part of it is because he's a fat dude, right? He's a big freaking dude, right? The guy never met a roast or a hamburger or a steak he didn't love. I mean, that's fine. That's great. But you still got to be athletic at the same time, right?
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong. Like, I mean, I think he's awesome, right? It's funny because I remember watching him play. I don't remember the game I watched. I'm like, man, that guy is big. Yeah. And but at the end of the day, right, you got to ask yourself the question. I guarantee that guy comes into the league. Yeah. Whatever team goes on, say, hey, bro, you need to shed some weight.
Yep.
They're going to put him on a Weight Watchers diet, flat out. You'll eat whitefish and chicken for a couple months, and lose some damn weight. I mean, it's for real. I mean, that's too big. That's too big. You got to be somewhat athletic because that's where it needs to go.
Yeah,
and I think he ended up getting like a little bit of. I think he shed like 15, 20 pounds up to this point too.
So he was at 400 before that.
Yeah. No, he was gigantic, dude. I mean, his nickname should have been Butterball or something, or like, I mean, who knows? But he's a big dude.
Hey.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, I think the biggest worry about him is his weight, and that's probably one of his biggest concerns because, I mean, he could balloon back up pretty easily, but I mean, once again, when you're in an NFL franchise, they're going to put you on a mean diet that you can only stay within this zone, or we're going to have some sort of professional chef cook you meals so you could kind of be on a certain diet so you could really thin out.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's a big dude. I mean, it kind of reminds me of like Vince Wilfork back in the days when he was just this big old huge dude in the middle of the D line.
Yeah.
And just massive guy that you can't move. And once again, big guy needs to still be able to move left and right and to be able to, do his things. And hopefully he'll have enough stamina to stay within a game. So I could understand the hesitation with him, but goodness gracious, who wants to go against a 384-pound, 6'8" dude? Like,
nope.
Oh yeah, that's
yeah. You put him on the right, and that's a good spot, for sure. But like, I think what you're saying though too is like, I feel like the league is probably concerned he's not going to be a 3-down tackle, because like he's going to be gassed after like maybe 2 downs, because he's just had not just too much weight for himself to push around, so
he's got to lose that weight. I mean, one guy they keep talking about on our first round pick is Olave from Ohio State.
Right.
Yep.
And look, I love that guy, but the thing about him though, he just reminds me so much of Keenan Allen, right?
Sure.
He just feels like a Keenan Allen 2.0, and we better not let Keenan Allen go. I mean, flat out. Like, I love that guy. Like, he's amazing, and but so I kind of have a hard time with the idea of him coming, first round. I mean, he'll be a first-round pick for sure.
Yeah, 100%.
But
yeah,
I just kind of don't see the need for that, right? But he's someone we should probably at least address a little bit, right? In that regard, I just feel like there's other bigger needs down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the one thing too, one other wide receiver, and I think could slide into the second. Now, once again, do we have a need for a wide receiver? But I put Treylon Burks. Like, he didn't really show out that well in the combine.
Yeah.
Now, there was a lot of comparisons to him, like A.J. Brown, Deebo Samuel. He said himself, like, I base my game off of Deebo Samuel, which, to be honest, is my favorite wide receiver in the NFL.
No, he's fantastic.
He's the best. Right now. Yeah.
And he's so fun to watch. And so Treylon Burks basically ran a 4.55, which is pretty low in the standards of what really happened in this draft, I think, or this combine. It was about 31 different players that were under a 4.4 speed, which is the most they've had in ever, pretty much. But Treylon Burks basically kind of seems like he might actually slide in the second, which is kind of an interesting thought to think for the Chargers. That, do you think that if we if we brought back, say, Mike Williams, you have Keenan Allen, we have Joshua Palmer, and then if you throw in a guy like a Treylon Burks who could be a complete, like, he could be even potentially used as a second back, like a running back, or he could be kind of in that position, like that Cordell Patterson kind of position, or that Deebo Samuel position.
Right. Could
he fit that mold? Like, I don't know. It's just something to think about. Like, could you get a guy that could basically play 2 positions that might help out somewhere or another? Like, we really need that X factor based player, because it seems like in the league they're trying to kind of get that Deebo Samuel, that Cordell Patterson, which, once again, I think that's a guy that we should go after in free agency, but we'll see.
Well, I'd love that idea. That'd be amazing.
Right. I think it'd be a phenomenal choice, but that's just one of those guys that I think that could have lost a little bit of money and possibly push him into at least the later in the first or even in the second. So,
and I think that's really where Tom Telesco is absolutely stellar, right?
Yep.
Like, so let me ask you this question, right? Offensively and defensively, do you think that Tom Telesco is going to keep all 11 picks, or do you think we're going to trade up? We've traded up in the past, but do you think this year we're going to trade up and give away some, or do you think we're just going to go with what we got and just pick whatever's available and just pick best available moving forward? Because, look, my only thought on this across the board, maybe this is our final thought for the offensive side for the combine, and maybe we should make this be our wrap-up thought, like our final thought for the offensive side.
Sure.
Look, at the end of the day, he's going to pick best available. And I think no matter what, we're going to focus on defense. But offense, you got to wonder, like, hey, if there's a guy on the offensive side they think is just absolutely amazing, hey, maybe just have another person out there. I mean, what's your general thoughts that Tom Telesco is going to, just go with best available? Wide receiver, tight end, what do you think? What do you guys think?
For the amount of picks that we have and for the amount of free agents and positions we're going to have open, I think that he's going to use all 11 of them. Because it's going to be able to give us a lot of chances to be able to get those home run picks, even in the late round. I do think that this draft is very, very deep in a lot of positions of need. And I do think that we could really pick up some really quality players in the mid to even potentially late round. I mean, there's a lot of speed, like I said earlier in this draft. 31 players that have went over or under 4.4 speed. We need speed somewhere or another. So I think they're going to use all 11. I don't see him doing any trade. I think that he's going to go with all 11 because we have a lot of positions of need right now, and not meaning as a need, but just mostly depth too. So I think we're going with all of them. I think there's no way that we're going to trade out, but I don't know. What do you think, Kyle?
I actually think, for the most part, I think we'll trade down. So I think we'll give maybe some other team an option to move up and take their position, so that we'll be a little bit later down in the first round. Because a lot of the players that we've talked about that the Chargers really need, whatever, are actually like drafting lower than our needs are for them. So. And so I think that we may be able to bargain down and like maybe get another pick or two next year as well, but then trade from our first round pick to their first round pick and still get what we want. But yeah, I think overall we're gonna use all 11 of our picks. We're not gonna give up away any of them. We're not gonna do the Rams thing and just F them picks.
No.
Yeah, definitely not. That's definitely not our style. And I think Tom Telesco is gonna definitely pick. And work with Brandon Staley and get the best that we can.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about that, right? I will say this: I do think that Telesco specifically can find value across the board in the draft.
Yeah.
Right.
I think we are just a few players away of just being a championship team. I really believe that, right? And again, that could be just a few people on the defensive side, on the line specifically. Let's upgrade the line on both sides of Linville Joseph if we re-sign him. Who knows, right? I think our corners are good. Get one or two more guys. But I think the draft will be really interesting to see what happens. Here's the thing. I will say free agency will give us a tell on what they're going to do in the draft.
Yeah.
Okay, 100%. Right?
Yes.
If you sign Mike Williams, then we're probably not going to be looking at Olave potentially.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, again, we all know that, right? That'll be really interesting to see what happens. But it's going to be exciting. I'm excited to see what happens in free agency and also in the draft for sure.
Yeah, I would love watching the draft. Yeah.
Yeah, and the one thing too, and I know we kind of dabbled a little bit on this, and I'm just kind of going to jump into one other position of need that I know we need to talk about, just because it was kind of a bit of an issue last year. I mean, Austin Eckler was awesome.
Oh yeah.
The second back we couldn't figure out. And I think we're going to draft another back, or we're going to find somebody, like I said, with
Treylon Burke.
Yeah.
Treylon Burke. That's kind of like the big question that might happen.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. So the thing is, there's two backs, and I'm going to point to the Georgia guys because heck, they won a national championship and they did a phenomenal job.
Yeah.
So Zamir White and James Cook. So those were like their 1-2 punches with them. I mean, Zamir White basically ended up having a 4.4 40, 6 foot, 214, good size. Actually, LaDainian Tomlinson talked about him on NFL Network, that he's a guy to watch.
Yeah.
He said he caught the ball well, showed good metrics all throughout. Basically, he's going to be a guy that a lot of teams are going to start looking at and be like, whoa, wait a minute. We should have kind of really paid attention to this other guy. I mean, 856 yards on 160 carries, 9 catches. So he didn't really show a lot of catching on the field, but he was kind of more predominantly just like a runner. Not a bad thought to kind of go after him. I don't know where he's going to be drafted, but 4th, 5th, maybe. I don't know. We could kind of look in that zone. Another guy, James Cook, was the brother of Dalvin Cook on Georgia too. I mean, he basically ran about the same speed, only about a 1/10 of a second less than what he did, 5'11". He says he's a solid backup based upon NFL.com draft prospector. He had a lot of catches too. He had a good average over about 6 yards a carry. I mean, those are dudes that you start thinking about and you think, I mean, there might be a pretty couple of good options there, and I don't know necessarily where they're going to get drafted, but those Georgia guys showed out a lot in this combine. So I think there's going to be a lot of eyes looking at them for sure.
They did.
So. Yeah, I like that. And you're right. Running back too is important, right? Because Austin Eckler, he ain't the biggest dude in the whole world, right? He can't carry the whole game, you know. You know, in a weird way though, for running back too, I kind of want a bruiser back. I want some big dude that could just smash mouth somebody in the face and just beat up the defense, right? You start hitting some of those like corners on those little, you know, edge runs or whatever, and just beat up the corner, show them, hey, look, you're gonna be hit in the mouth if you're trying to stop me, you know. And those are the guys I kind of like a little more, you know, goal line type of running backs.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. Those guys would be absolutely excellent, right? Put a few more pounds on those guys and make them smash mouth, man. I like that.
Yeah.
Yep. I'd have no problem with that. So, but you know, I mean, those are just a couple guys that I've thought about too. That, you know, there are positions of needs for us on the offensive side. I mean, and once again, I'm going to look at all these metrics and just say, hey, it could be something good to look at, but I don't think it's going to be like what's going to determine to be able to get somebody, you know, drafted. Like, for instance, and I know we don't care about quarterbacks by any means. We're definitely good in that position, but you go look at Kenny Pickett with 8.5-inch hands and small hands. I mean, that's the smallest hands in the NFL. And that's a position where you're going to get attacked a lot. What are the defensive players going to do? Well, we're going to attack those guys and attack his hands as much as you can. And I was thinking, you know, Joe Burrow had 9.5-inch hands. He still got to the Super Bowl, right? He got sacked 70 times last season in total.
And hardly had any fumbles at that.
Right.
So
it's different. And then with Kenny Pickett, Kenny Pickett, he fumbled 38 times in college, losing 26 of those. I mean, cold weather makes a difference too, and he did play at Pitt. He never threw over 9 interceptions in one season. So,
are you saying his hands had shrinkage?
Yes, there is some shrinkage. There is some shrinkage. But I'm just saying, defensive players will see that and think like, hey, we got to swipe the ball. You know, I remember it was Michael Robinson, I think was his name. He was played for the Seahawks years ago. And he was on Good Morning Football talking about that. And he says, as a special teams player or as a defensive player, if you know and understand this guy's got small hands, they're going to swipe at it. And that could really determine a little bit of how successful you could be. And now Kenny Pickett, if he's in the NFL, he's going to probably be first round, maybe early second round, depending on some quarterback needy teams, which there seems to be a lot of them. Yeah. That's something he has to work on and find a way to protect the ball and be smart about it. So So, but once again, these are all stats. They could be great to look at. They could look bad, but at the same side, you know, it doesn't really matter, because if you got the ability to play and ball out and be smart, and I mean, heck, Tom Brady got drafted really late in the draft, and guess what he did? He became the greatest of all time. So,
and guess what else? Ryan Leaf looked great on paper, and look what happened to him. So
exactly correct. Exactly correct.
You know, the one thing too, he was also just on
Rich Eisen.
Rich Eisen's show. Did you watch that? Did you watch that video where he talked about a story about the combine?
I watched bits and pieces of it, not a whole lot.
I didn't watch all of it. I think
so it's an interesting story, because I've never heard about it, and it's always interesting to talk about Ryan Leaf. And I remember I got his jersey when he got drafted and thinking, man, this guy's gonna be great. And you know where it went, but he talked a lot about that, and he kind of like delayed his declaring to go into the NFL draft, and then he started kind of getting wined and dined, and then he had all these events kind of leading up to the combine, so he really didn't even pay attention to like trying to, you know, run faster and work on, you know, jumping up and grabbing or for the jump thing where you hit the sticks and stuff, and like the leaping and all these different things. He didn't really like work out to it, so he came in very unprepared and didn't really show out that well. And so there are some of these guys that might have been that same thing. Now, I'm not saying they're going to turn into a Ryan Leaf, but some of these guys might just have bad metrics. Now, they could go into their pro day and probably show out better, which will come down the line up till the draft.
Yeah. And
it might make them look a little bit better. So maybe they just were a little bit shell-shocked. Maybe that they had really not enough time to train to get to this point. So I'm just saying that some of these guys might have bad metrics, but they might end up getting a little bit better on their pro days. And and once again, the metrics kind of don't matter to me. Personally, to me, I want to see game film and see what you do with helmet and pads on. Because I feel like that's a lot. That says a lot more to me than these guys running around in underwear, basically. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
But anything else? Any other last thoughts? Any more offensive thoughts?
No, I think bottom line, I think we're gonna go for the combine specifically draft. It's going to be depth for the offensive side. I don't think it's going to be their first pick for the most part. Unless you talk about the right side of the line, the Trevor Penning side.
Yeah.
Other than that, I think we're going to get some wide receivers out of depth, and that's about it at this point. I think we're really going to focus mostly on the defensive side moving forward this draft, and try and make our team a championship team. That's my thoughts.
Yep, 100%. If anything, offense is just going to be, going to fill some gaps there. But I don't think really it's going to go first-round pick at all. Yeah.
No. Yep.
I mean, the only first-round pick I would go after is a good right tackle if we were able to get Penning. That's probably my opinion. That's would be the need. And then after that point, if he's not there, defense. Go defense from that point, and right tackle later on. So I agree.
Cool.
But
All right.
Good. Well, appreciate it, guys. Give us any likes, share, comment. We want to hear from you guys, and we want to see what your thoughts are on the offensive choices for the draft. So, Bolt Bros, we out.
Bolt Bros!